I have something really exciting to share with you all. My friends at Leading Edge Seminars are hosting an incredible learning and vacation experience in Cancun this February called Innovations in Psychotherapy. This is a unique opportunity to get away for a week this winter while you learn new skills and earn CEs in the morning, then have afternoons to do whatever you like at an all inclusive luxury resort. And from November 14th through the 28th, they're having a big Black Friday sale where you can save 40%. 40%, y'all, on your workshop fee when you purchase accommodations at the same time. So just imagine this: fresh coffee in the morning on your private balcony, yoga at the beach, an all you can eat breakfast overlooking the ocean, training until lunch with one of your favorite clinicians. Then you have the afternoon to have fun and a beautiful tropical paradise. At the Innovations in Psychotherapy Cancun, you'll have 6 half-day CE workshops to choose from. Frank Anderson, MD, will be presenting IFS parts, yours and theirs, what every successful IFS therapist needs to know. Lisa Ferentz will be talking about treating anxiety and depression, creative strategies to help your most challenging clients. John Briere will be presenting on complex trauma and challenging client presentations. He's going to address 5 clinical dilemmas with mindfulness, compassion, and resilience. Tammy Nelson is going to present on clinical interventions for sex, intimacy, and relationship dilemmas. Ariel Schwartz, somatic therapy, new approaches to trauma treatment, and Eliana Gill, using expressive therapies in clinical practice. 2023 best practices for working with kids and families. And if you're ready to get away this winter, then I hope you'll consider heading to Cancun for Leading Edge Seminars, Innovations in Psychotherapy. Now, you can click on the link in the show notes where you can go straight to signing up for any of the 3 weeks. You could do 1 week, you can do 2 weeks, you can do all 3 weeks. How amazing would that be? 3 weeks in Cancun. But be sure to go ahead and sign up between November 14th and November 28th. Reserve your spot as soon as you can. These are going to sell out. And as a special thank you for going through my affiliate link, which, by the way, if you decide to sign up, I might receive a small compensation at no extra cost to you if you use my link. But on top of that, I'm also going to offer you one of 2 things. You can get a 30-minute consultation with me. We can talk about anything you like: podcasting, shifting, pivoting your skill sets outside of the therapy room. You can use that 30 minutes however you like, or you can get 4 of my Podcourses for free. So when you sign up, after you sign up, I will send you over more information about how you can pick one of those options. Okay, you guys, don't forget November 14th through the 28th. That's the Black Friday special where you can get 40% off on the workshop fee when you purchase accommodations at the same time. Welcome to the Therapy Show podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard. In each episode, I interview a seasoned and knowledgeable talk therapist from the counseling world to glean valuable insights, techniques, and tools that you can apply to your practice and your life. And if you're considering a career in the counseling field or just want to hear about what it's like to be a talk therapist, then this is the podcast for you. Well, this week's guest is a repeat guest. She's been on the podcast before. I'm excited for you guys to get to know Whitney Owens a little bit better. So who is she? Whitney Owens is a licensed professional counselor, group practice owner, and faith-based private practice consultant. She is located in Savannah, Georgia, where she manages a private pay group practice with 10 plus clinicians. And along with running her practice, she consults practice owners around the country on how to start and grow a successful faith-based practice. She hosts summits, a weekly podcast, and a membership community for faith-based practice owners called Wise Practice. She has spoken at numerous events, such as both the Georgia and Maryland annual professional counselors conferences, as well as trainings for Florida's Counseling Association. In 2023, she will be speaking at Meet You in Kentucky, which is for group practice owners, as well as hosting her own summit in Savannah. That's next October 2023. In her free time, Whitney enjoys spending time with her husband and 2 daughters, running, reading, and relaxing in the backyard. And her podcast, Wise Practice, I believe that's the name of it, Wise Practice podcast, is going to be launching this Friday, the 18th. And I am so excited for her to get started with her show. And in this episode, we are going to talk about marketing a cash pay private practice. Whitney's going to give us her best tips. And I think you might be surprised at what she shares. It has more to do with how you actually answer the phone and how you show up on the phone with potential clients instead of actually what are you posting on Instagram. So I hope you guys find this episode valuable. You can learn more about Whitney at her website, whitneyowens.com or watersedgecounseling.com. Don't worry, those links will be in the show notes. And we hope you guys enjoy this episode. And on Friday, go check out her show. It's going to be just awesome. Well, hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of the Therapy Show. This week's guest is Whitney Owens, who has been on the podcast before, but welcome back to the podcast. It's awesome to have you.
Oh, so glad to be here, Lisa.
Yeah, me too. I am really excited for all the great things that you're doing, and I want you to definitely let us all know all those things. But today we're going to talk about marketing a cash pay private practice, which is something that I know a lot of you guys are curious to learn more about. So, but before we jump into that, can you tell us who you are and a little bit about your practice?
Yes, would love to. So Whitney Owens, I'm located here in Savannah, Georgia. So right on the coast, very beautiful historic city. I love living here. I started a solo practice in 2014, 2018. I started hiring my first clinicians. Never thought I'd be where I am now, but there are 11 therapists. We're all private pay. And then I have 2 administrative assistants. And then when I'm not running the practice, I also do consulting for faith-based practice owners, helping them start and grow their private practice.
Yes, gosh, so much. And we could probably do a whole episode on what it was like from 2014 to 2018. But maybe so let's can you think back to that point? Were you cash pay back then too?
It's a story, actually. Yes. So I first was in Colorado right after I graduated. I moved to Colorado for my husband to go to seminary. And when I was there, I worked at a hospital while I was working on my hours for licensure. I got licensed out in Colorado, had a private practice there, and then moved to Savannah. Well, when I tried to get my license here in the state of Georgia, they said no. So in the state of Colorado, they required 2 years post-graduation hours, 2,000 hours of clinical, 100 hours of supervision. The state of Georgia required 1,800 hours, so 200 less. 90 hours of supervision, 10 less, but they wanted you to do it in 3 years instead of 2. So even though I had more clinical, more supervision than required, and had been licensed for over a year with a private practice, the state of Georgia said, well, you did that too fast. We want you to do a whole nother year. And it has to be synchronous, like 30 hours each year of supervision. So because of that, when I started my practice here, I could not take insurance because I wasn't licensed. It seems like it's so much easier now to get on panels when you're associate than it was back then, but I couldn't get on panels. I had to work under a church because that was the only place I could find a job. And then I basically did private practice, but I was under like a contractor. And so I started as a cash pay practice. And I did that for a year and built a whole practice in 1 year. And so I was like, well, I love the model. I love what it stands for. Why would I go back now and get on panels when this is working?
Right.
And then it just kept working.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it kept working. You grew so much. It was working so well. That's really exciting. Okay. So let's talk about, because there are a lot of folks out there who they're on insurance panels. They want to get off insurance panels, but they're worried, they're scared. And then there's some folks who want to start private practice and don't even want to touch, those insurance panels. So what are some of your best tips or advice for getting started?
Yeah. So I definitely think getting started, if you haven't done anything yet, thinking through that process of insurance and not insurance. And I definitely want to say not one is necessarily better than another, but based on what your needs are, one could be better than another, your location, what the clients need, things like that. So you have to do a lot more jumping through hoops, of course, to get on panels in the credentialing process, but then the marketing is a lot easier. You are automatically getting marketed if you're on panels.
Right.
And then the opposite, it's like self-pay. You can get set up a lot faster for your practice, but you're going to have to really work hard to get clients and to do that marketing, which I think is a special skill. I think where people get into a bad situation, or a difficult one, I should say, is when they want to do both. So they get on some panels, but then they're trying to get cash pay clients. And I just think your marketing efforts are different depending on how you're doing it. And you can't really market as an insurance-based practice and get a bunch of cash pay very easily. I feel like cash pay, you have to kind of have a certain way you talk and a certain way you do things, and that doesn't lead itself very well to getting people on panels. Like, I don't get a lot of clients that want to use super bills and things like that.
Right. Okay. So that's important. So you need to think it through ahead of time. And okay. And so I'm guessing people need to think about like what are their end goals first, like where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself? Okay. Yeah, I think that's really important. So let's say you're going to go the cash pay route. How is the marketing different? You were alluding to that earlier.
Yes. Well, I think you have to do things with more excellence to be able to maintain those clients. So the first thing is the phone, like answering the phone when people call, answering it in real time. People want to argue this point with me all the time. Well, I call them back within 24 hours or the next day. And the truth is, clients that get the phone answered immediately are a lot more likely to schedule.
Okay.
And so you're really going to lose people if you're not answering it in real time. So someone who needs to use their insurance, they probably have 3 places they're calling. They need to be able to use the panel. And so it's a little easier for them to get away with getting a call a day or 2 later.
Mm-hmm.
But with a cash pay practice, I feel like you've really got to answer that phone as soon as it rings. And if you don't, they're going to go down their list of other people.
Okay. So that's important. So if you are somebody who likes that idea, but can't be answering your phone all the time, do you recommend hiring somebody out of the gate, like to help you with that?
I wouldn't say when you first necessarily start, but because when you first start, hopefully you're by your phone a lot because you're not working, right? But then once you build your caseload, if you start to miss calls or you start to find that it's stressful, like I remember before I hired my first assistant, I'd be sitting at my desk doing my note. My next client would be coming in 10 minutes. My phone would ring, right? I'm thinking, I really need a new client, but someone's about to be here. I'm going to get off this call in 10 minutes. And then you're rushing through the call or someone's waiting at the door and it's stressful.
Right.
So I'd say when you get to that place, that's when you want to hire somebody. And obviously, if you hire somebody, they can do a lot more than answer the phone. They can answer your emails and run supplies and things like that.
Okay. Okay. That's a great tip. And then, so what are you saying to them on the phone that might be different?
Yes, I love that you're asking this question. And I need to do a whole podcast episode on this. But the idea of you have to talk about treatment differently.
Okay.
So what usually happens if someone wants to use their insurance, they jump on the phone and the first thing they say is, do you take Blue Cross? Do you take Cigna? Right. And I don't want treatment to be narrowed down to our payer, this third party payer who doesn't really know us or anything about us. Let's actually talk about the clinical issue, the best fit therapist for that clinical issue, or if you need another level of care and those kind of things. So we kind of stop the conversation right there and say, well, before we start talking about payment, we want to get to know you first. And they're like, oh, okay. Because a lot of places don't want to get to know you. They just want to know if you can pay or not. And even I worked at a hospital where that was at the very beginning, and they didn't want us wasting our time on calls with people that weren't going to be able to pay for services because we didn't take their insurance. So first we get to know the person. So we're saying, what's your name? What's your callback number in case we get disconnected? And honestly, we do that because they may not end up scheduling and they might want a follow-up call. So it's kind of like taking that extra effort to follow up with people that don't schedule to say, hey, did you find what you needed? Right. So we get that information up front. And then it's so important too that you find out the referral source. That's the third question we ask, because I'm putting all this time, money, energy into marketing. And if I don't know where those people came from, I don't know what's working and what's not.
Right.
And I want to put my money and time into what works and not what doesn't work. Yeah. So tracking those calls is vital. So then after we ask how they heard about us, we ask them, tell me a little bit about yourself and your situation or your loved one or whatever. Like, we want to know what's going on. And so then they tell us the situation. And so then we take that information and say, hey, I have a therapist that can help you in these ways. So this is the simple example. Someone who has anxiety, I might say, well, you know what? I have Sarah, who's a therapist here at the practice. She's been here for 5 years. She specializes in CBT, which is one of the most effective forms of therapy for anxiety. She works with a lot of college students. I think that, your child or you would be a great fit with her. So you're really selling the therapist or yourself. Like, hey, I've seen situations like that before, right? And so you're taking that extra time to be with that client on that phone call and really walk them through that process. And then a lot of times when you get to that point, then we start talking about money. right? Or locate. Well, actually, we talk about schedule first, like what's a good schedule for you, because I might have to switch the therapist based on availability. And then we start talking about different rates. And at that time, offering them different options for what they need. Like there are super bills, or this is the reason we're a cash pay practice. And I do have to educate people, like when you use insurance, here's how that works. And when you use cash, here's how that works. And so we explain and educate them on that. Like, for example, if your child were to become a doctor or become a pilot, go into politics, all of that stuff comes up in the process. And so if you pay cash for therapy, no one will know that you came here. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Years ago, Blue Cross, this is a long time ago, but they had a breach on their system. All these names got out, right? And a lot of clients don't realize that when we bill insurance, we have to use a diagnostic code. And you're going to feel a little bit more push to give somebody a more severe diagnosis to get treatment. Not that we do that, but if someone's on the line, you're helping them get services. And it's just not a good situation for a therapist to feel like they have to be in. Like, we personally like to use the least invasive diagnosis. And we can do that when we're a private pay practice. And we can decide what type of treatment you need, how many sessions you need, and not the third party payer.
Right. Yeah. Those points are so important. And I also want to, add to that if you have a diagnosis and then you go and you switch insurances one day and they ask you, have you ever had a mental health diagnosis? And you're honest and you say, yes, man, they are going to call you and they are going to talk. They are going to want to know everything. Like, they're going to call you and they're going to talk to you about your diagnosis and how long ago was it and what were your symptoms. And they're going to ask you all these questions to make sure that you're not, don't have a pre-existing condition. Now, maybe things have changed nowadays because of healthcare, reform, but I know that at a point, I've heard stories about that, in the past too. And I don't think many, people see health insurance as this benefit and they want to use it. But once they are educated on what does it really mean, a lot of times people are like, whoa, like, I don't want to use it after all. So I think that's really important that we do educate people on what happens when you use your health insurance for mental health issues. Definitely.
Yeah, especially with couples,
Okay.
because with couples, they won't pay the same amount if you bill it as a family. So then a lot of therapists will bill as an individual. And then it makes it look like only one of the two people went to therapy, and that's not good.
Right.
It just gets dicey, and you feel like you've got to cross some boundaries you might not want to cross to be able to help clients get treatment. And it just gets yucky.
Yeah, it does. I know. And it's such a weird system. Like, how do you make it better? I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure we could probably come up with something, but at this point in time, I don't know what the answer is. But yeah. And I do want to go back to something that you said about when you're talking to them, and instead of asking them, well, what type of insurance do you have so we can make sure that we accept it and you're going to pay, you're asking them to get to know them. You're trying to get to know them a little bit before you make the appointment. I think that's so wise, because what if it's something that you're not competent in? Let's say somebody shows up and they have the insurance, but yet they show up in your office and you're like, I've never worked with schizophrenia before. Oh no, you've just kind of wait, and what do you do in that case? Like, so it's really good to get to know the person, I think, either way, to find out if what's going on is something that you can treat, if you have competency, to treat that issue. I just kind of that just reminded me of that, of that thought, because I've run into that before too. And so I'm always really mindful about making sure that it's something that I can work with.
Yeah. I think another mistake that I do see a lot of practice owners make is they have that fear that you just shared. And so they offer these 15-minute free consults, right? And as a practice owner, I'm thinking business, like, what are we saying to our clients? So I just talked to this girl the other day and she said, I do a phone call and then I hear a little bit on the phone and then I schedule a free 15-minute consult. And I was like, you're basically giving them therapy. And I'm sure it's never 15 minutes.
No.
And you're an expert. Like, what doctor doesn't charge for 15 minutes of advice? Like, you need to be charging for that appointment. And okay, the worst thing happens. It's somebody who didn't read your website, didn't make the first call to get censored, right? Because normally we want to do that. So then they come in and maybe they say eating disorders for me. Like, I don't touch eating disorders. So at least I got an assessment done. And at least they came into an office. Then I can transfer them. Fortunately, I have a group, so it's easy for me to give them to somebody else that's an expert or to another practice in town. Like, but people need to be paying for that session And I think a lot of business owners lose a lot of money that they need to run their business.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know of any doctor that's not going to do that. Like any specialist, you go in, maybe you have, I'm just thinking like a broken toe, but you go in and they're like, oh, I specialize in knees, but you're still going to, they're still going to assess you. You're still going to be there taking up their time. Like they're doing something for you at that point. I do think that a lot of people will give away our time a lot for free. I mean, and I don't know, maybe it's because we want to help people. We want to make sure they get what they need. But if you do that too much, it burns you out because you're not getting, paid your worth, your value. So
Yep. I
yeah.
think it's especially true for private practice self-pay, that
Mhm.
they feel almost like we feel guilty. So we
Mhm.
have to give them this exceptional, this free 15 minutes to make it worth them paying for us later. And it's just not accurate. In fact, you're going to let your client know that you're a professional by making them pay for it. It's actually to the benefit of the client in the long
Yeah.
run.
Yeah, no, I agree with you for sure on that. What about any other ways that when you think about marketing a cash pay practice, anything else come to mind like social media or ads, anything there that you would do differently?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. And some of these are going to be things that an insurance-based practice, of course, will benefit from, but really important things is obviously a really good website. We could do a whole podcast series on every one of these topics, by the way. I'm just hitting them. SEO,
Hmm.
hands down, best investment I ever made in my practice was search engine optimization.
Hmm.
I mean, once I did that, I've exploded.
Yeah.
I think that doing good therapy, like people are going to talk about you if you're a good therapist, really utilizing, and this is going to sound kind of bad, but it's good, utilizing your clients to be able to make connections in the community. So here's an example for that. Let's say this mom, her 14-year-old comes in and they find us on Google
Hmm.
and they come and see one of my adolescent therapists and they go to a private school in town. Well, we're going to ask for that release of information because that kid's going to a school. We want to collaborate. And obviously, if parents are okay with it, and then we follow up with the school and say, hey, I want you to know this client is here. This is the treatment we're doing. What are you seeing at the school? Because this is best for the client, right? But we're actually marketing.
Hmm.
Because the next time that a kid goes into that counselor's office, they're going to be like, oh, I remember that therapist over at Water's Edge. Like, I'm going to be referring to her, because a lot of therapists don't pick up the phone. They don't call people back. They don't do that one-on-one interactions. And so I do think that's like what takes us a step above. In fact, our Google My Business went down last year. It was actually around this time. Oh, it
Hmm.
was terrible. It's like 6 weeks. And it really messes with your analytics on your website too.
Hmm.
But I was so glad we had those word of mouth referrals because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket in marketing.
Right.
Not
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah. That's really, really smart and kind of strategic too. Of course, you're definitely doing it for the best interest of your client, but at the same time, you're like, you kind of know what you're doing. I mean, it makes sense to me. I think that's really smart. And kind of thinking about how I operate, being that I kind of work for an agency. I guess you would call it work for an agency. But when I get those releases and I connect with another provider that I might be referring somebody to, like I call it a warm transfer or a warm referral. Like if
Yes.
I can get that release, I'm going to be, calling that veterans agency or whatever it might be and just kind of promoting what it is that I do for service members and vice versa. So it works both ways. Like even though I'm not in private practice, it definitely helps me with my role at my agency that I work for. So kind of, I really like that advice. That's just great advice. Good, warm networking, I guess, advice for sure. Is there anything else you can think of that, we didn't cover yet?
Yeah. I could tell you tons of things.
Okay.
But even in that same vein, then all my therapists start to build a reputation in town, which is great because you don't want the practice to be about the practice owner, or you're
Right.
going to be slammed
Yes.
all the time, right?
Right.
Let's see. Another thing that I think that practice owners need to do with the marketing is talk about their practice all the time. They
Okay.
don't want to. They don't want to, they feel like they're being arrogant or rude or whatever. The truth is, everyone needs to know where a therapist is. Do you know how
Hmm.
many times I say I'm a therapist and someone says, oh, do you have a recommendation? Or where should I go? I don't know how to find somebody.
Hmm.
So I talk about my practice all the time. I go to supper club. I'm talking about my practice. I go to my child's doctor's office and I talk about my practice. And actually, that's how we got connected. I just took my daughter into the pediatrician and I said, where do y'all refer people for therapy? And he was like, well, we have a list. You want me to connect you? And I did. And now we get referrals from them. And so it's just talking about it. I had another incident where one of my girlfriends, her son was friends with a OBGYN son in town.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, OBGYN, will you text me and her at the same time? Like, I know that's really bold, but she didn't know who I was, but she did. And I texted her back. I said, I'm a therapist in town. I can work with postpartum. She got on the phone with me. We chatted. I
Yeah.
took some stuff up there. It was great.
Yeah. It really, that's such great advice, because I don't, sometimes I forget how, I don't want to use the word desperate, but how in a bind doctors can be when somebody comes in their office and they're like, they would love to refer to you. I mean, they're looking for people to refer. And just because you don't accept insurance doesn't mean that you shouldn't put yourself out there, because plenty of their patients don't want to, may not want to use their insurance for mental health. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
plenty. I've witnessed that for sure. Gosh. Okay. What else you got? You got some good stuff.
Yeah. And I think giving clients just an excellent experience.
Yeah.
Like for my practice, we're located in an old historic home on a busy corner. And when they come in, they're greeted at the door. They're not in like a sterile white office. It's like a home. You're offered a cup of coffee. We have chocolates in every therapy room. And so welcome, come on upstairs. And like, we're all just super friendly and warm.
Yeah.
Which I think goes really far. A lot of people will even say, I scheduled because when I got on the phone with your admin, she was so nice. Or she answered the calls, or whatever the case may be. And so I feel like you do have to take that extra effort. But then when their clients start talking about you because they love your office, they love coming to your practice, and it's such a wonderful thing. So that personal relationship, though, goes far. Like we do Christmas gifts every year. We're in the process of figuring those out right now. And so being able to really be involved in your community. One of my therapists is speaking at a local church on Saturday to a youth group. Tomorrow night, me and 2 other therapists are going to a private school in town and doing like a seminar with parents on anxiety.
Nice.
So just getting into the community, being willing to offer that kind of service, I think gets your name out there too.
Yeah. Oh, I love those. I love those tips. Those are great. I'm like making notes over here. Even though I don't have a private practice, these are just great ways to market yourself and to get out there. Oh gosh. Okay. Anything else that you can think of?
Yeah. Just the importance of, I'll let this be the last one, okay. I think, but the importance of churches. Like, even if you're not a faith-based practice, churches really need to refer, because pastors are inundated with clients coming in. And I always encourage, if you do meet with a pastor, here's what you can say, my tip. If they have to meet with somebody more than twice, they need to refer them out to a counselor.
Yeah.
And so especially couples therapists, I mean, pastors are always looking to refer out couples. And so faith-based or not, get involved in reaching out to churches, because they have a lot of clients they could be sending your way.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good tip. These are so good. So good. Yeah. I have to have you back to talk some more, because we could just probably go on for another hour about marketing and tips. And gosh, so what are you most excited about coming up soon? What's going on for you?
Oh, goodness. I have my hand in too many baskets, just to be honest, but I'm excited about it all. So I have a podcast that's launching. Now we're recording here, mid-November. I don't know when this episode will go live, but my podcast is going live November 18th, the Wise Practice Podcast. So I'm thrilled about that. And I have you, of course, as one of my guests on the show. And so that podcast is to help people start and grow faith-based practices. So we talk about business, but we also talk about spirituality. I say business with a twist of faith. Yeah.
I like it.
So thanks. Yeah. So I have that going on. I am hosting a summit. So this will be in October 2023 here in Savannah, Georgia, right by the water. It's going to be gorgeous and a lot of fun. So that's the Wise Practice Summit. And then I do have a membership community for faith-based practice owners. We meet every week. I do some teaching. We do Q&As. We have accountability. You get in a small group. So that membership community is called Wise Practice Membership. So all that stuff's on my website, whitneyowens.com. Would love to connect with you. And just as a freebie, if you are looking for ways to network with churches, I have a free PDF on my website, whitneyowens.com, and you can download that. And it goes through like steps on how to like talk to pastors and how to make those connections.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I will put all of that in the show notes so people can reach out to you. And I can't wait for your podcast to start. It's going to be awesome. And are you saying that you are a part of a network? Are you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
You and I are both part of a cool network called the Psychotherapy Network with our good friend Gordon Brewer. So it's a wonderful way for us to connect as podcast owners to be able to promote one another. And then for me personally, they're going to be actually creating and helping me implement my podcast. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Oh, that's exciting. Wow, man. So many cool things on the horizon. And it's so great to know you and to connect with you. I'm super grateful for you. And gosh, excited for all the things that you're doing. It's really cool. And I can't wait to see you in October. I'm going to be there. I'm going to make myself, I am right now putting it out there. I will be at the Wise Practice Summit, right? That's what we're calling it, Wise Practice
That
Summit?
is it. You got it.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Whitney, for being here.
Thanks, Lisa.
Hey guys, before we end this episode, if you are liking my content, if you're liking my podcast, be sure to go over and leave me a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. And if you are up for it, I'd love it if you left me a review as well. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. I know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I'm thankful you've chosen to listen to mine.
Be sure to visit lisamustard.com to access the show notes and discover more fantastic content.
And I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the show. Thank you.